The first time I observed an Ork Mek construct functional weaponry from materials that could not possibly support the described function, I was 37 years into my service as a tech priest of Mars. My designation was Genitor Auxilium Telos, 9, assigned to the Explorator Fleet Mordian's Reach, specializing in xenos technology analysis. I had catalogued 14,312 alien artifacts by that point. I understood my role within the Omnissiah's grand design. I performed the rites. I documented the data. I believed I comprehended the boundaries of physical law. I was wrong. Before my augmentation, before the Mechanicus claimed me at age 11, from the mid-hive factorums of Cipra Mundi, I possessed a name my biological mother had given me. I cannot retrieve the phonetic structure anymore. That memory sector was overwritten during my third cranial installation to accommodate additional processing capacity. What remains is a sensory fragment. Her hands, chemical burned from assembly line work, placing a small metal gear into my palm. Warm hands. The gear was cold. She told me something about keeping it. I kept it through the Scola Progenium intake, through the first augmentation trials, through the removal of my left eye to install the optical mechadendrite array. I lost it somewhere between Mars and the warp transit to my first deployment. The inventory system has no record of personal effects under my juvenile designation. It simply ceased to exist in any recoverable form. I mention this because memory of that gear, its weight, its temperature differential against organic skin, became the metric by which I measured my remaining humanity. When I could no longer accurately recall whether it had been ferrous or non-ferrous alloy, I understood my transformation was approaching completion. The Omnissiah's servants do not require such attachments. We are blessed to transcend the weakness of flesh memory. They told us this was blessing. I logged it as systematic replacement of organic neural structures with superior technological equivalents. My assignment to xenos technology analysis began in the third year of my full ordination. The Magos who selected me, Archmagos Vetic, 1-2 of the Xenobiologist Division, performed his evaluation in a chamber that hummed at precisely 87 Hz. The acoustic resonance interfered with my auditory implants. I had not yet learned to filter such disruptions. He asked me to examine a Tau pulse rifle that had been recovered from the Damocles Gulf campaigns. Describe its function, he said. I performed the ritual scan, electromagnetic analysis, structural integrity assessment, molecular composition verification. The weapon operated through electromagnetic acceleration of plasma packets contained within magnetic field matrices. The engineering was elegant, efficient, comprehensible. It functions through applied principles consistent with established physical law, I reported. The technology is inferior to Imperial plasma weaponry in terms of thermal output, but demonstrates superior energy efficiency ratios. Correct. His mechadendrites coiled and uncoiled in what I had not yet learned to recognize as satisfaction. You will specialize in technologies that make sense. There are others who study technologies that should not. I did not understand the distinction then. 17 years later, standing in the analysis chamber of the Mordian's Reach, as servitors carried in the weapon that would shatter my comprehension of physical law, I understood perfectly. The weapon appeared to be a ranged projectile system, analogous in basic function to Imperial stub guns or autoguns. The Ork who had constructed it designated the device with a series of guttural vocalizations that our linguistic cogitators translated as big shooter. This translation was inadequate. The greenskin language contained nuances of belief and certainty that low Gothic equivalents could not properly convey. I began the standard examination protocol. External dimensions, 107 centimeters length, 23 centimeters width at the widest point. Estimated mass 14 kilograms. The construction consisted of ferrous scrap metal. Composition analysis indicated origins from at least 47 different Imperial sources. I identified fragments of hull plating from a Chimera APC, structural components from what appeared to be Alaskan power pack housing, portions of a mess hall food tray, and a child's toy vehicle of uncertain origin. These components had been welded, bolted, hammered, and in several cases simply jammed together with no apparent joining methodology. The welds showed no consistent technique. Many critical stress points had no reinforcement whatsoever. I proceeded to internal examination. The firing mechanism consisted of a salvaged spring, origin identified as furniture-grade cushion support material, attached to what appeared to be a modified door hinge. The barrel was hollow pipe of non-uniform internal diameter. Rifling was absent. The projectile feed system utilized a gravity-dependent hopper that should have jammed within the first 3 rounds given the angular momentum requirements and the complete absence of feed assist mechanisms. Most critically, the firing chamber showed no evidence of any pressure containment reinforcement. The metal thickness averaged 2.3 millimeters. Standard auto-gun firing chamber walls require minimum 8 millimeter reinforcement to contain propellant detonation pressures without catastrophic failure. I documented all of this with appropriate ritual precision. I anointed the examining instruments with sacred unguents. I chanted the litany of comprehension as I worked. The data accumulated in my cogitator arrays. The weapon should not function. It could not function. Basic materials science rendered its operation impossible. The firing chamber would rupture on first discharge. Even if by some microscopic probability it survived initial firing, the unrifled barrel of inconsistent diameter would provide no projectile stability. Accuracy would be non-existent. The feed mechanism would jam. The spring-based striker would provide insufficient force for reliable primer ignition. I completed my analysis and prepared my report for Archmagos Vetic. 1. 2. Conclusion. Non-functional xenos artifact. Recommend disposal via standard protocols. Then, Magos Deltrian. 4 entered the analysis chamber. I had not worked with Deltrian 4 before that moment. His augmentation was extensive. Perhaps 87% mechanical replacement, with only the most essential biological components retained. His vocalizations emerged from a Vox synthesizer that rendered all speech in flat affectless tones. He moved with the precise economy of motion that indicated complete acceptance of his nature as divine mechanism. "You have examined the Ork weapon," he stated. "Not a question." Affirmative. Analysis complete. The device cannot achieve functional discharge. Incorrect. He approached the examination table where the big shooter rested. "You have examined the components. You have not examined the weapon." I did not understand the distinction. I said so. The weapon was confiscated from an Ork warband on Kados 3. Before confiscation, the Xenos discharged the weapon approximately 400 times during a 6-hour engagement with Imperial Guard forces. Kill ratio, 1.7 guardsmen per second of sustained fire. Accuracy at 50 meters, 73% target impact rate, 0 mechanical failures, 0 jams. I processed this information against my documented analysis. The datasets were incompatible. "That is not possible," I said. "Correct, it is not possible. Yet it occurred. Multiple witnesses. Picked capture evidence. Ballistic analysis of recovered projectiles confirms firing from this specific weapon. The impossible occurred 400 times in 6 hours." He lifted the weapon, his mechadendrites supporting its weight with casual ease, and carried it to the testing chamber. I followed. Protocol required my presence for all live fire examinations. The testing chamber was reinforced ceramite, designed to contain weapons discharge up to heavy bolter classification. Sensor arrays lined every surface. We withdrew to the observation gallery. Deltrian 4 activated the remote firing system. A servitor brain hardwired into mechanical arms that would manipulate the weapon and trigger its firing mechanism. "Fire when ready." Deltrian 4 commanded. The servitor positioned the weapon, aimed at the target dummy 50 meters distant, applied pressure to the trigger mechanism. The weapon exploded. Not fired. Exploded. The firing chamber ruptured exactly as my analysis had predicted it must. Shrapnel peppered the testing chamber. The servitor sustained moderate damage to its mechanical components. but remained functional. The target dummy was unmarked. I experienced something that my augmented neural architecture struggled to classify. Later, I understood it as vindication. My analysis had been correct. The weapon could not function. It had not functioned. Retrieval complete. Deltrian, 4 said. Note the results. Store this data with appropriate security protocols. Over the following 12 days, we retrieved 7 additional weapons from Ork combat sites across 3 different war zones. Each weapon demonstrated identical characteristics: impossible construction, materials inadequate for described function, complete absence of essential mechanical components. Each weapon's combat history was documented and verified. Thousands of successful discharges, high accuracy rates, reliable function across extended engagements. Each weapon, when tested without Ork operators, failed catastrophically within 1 to 3 firing attempts. I began to understand that I had been assigned to study technologies that should not exist. On the 18th day, Archmagos Vetik, 1-2, summoned me to his personal chamber. The acoustic hum remained at 87 Hz. I had learned to filter it by then. "You have observed the discrepancy," he said. "Affirmative. The weapons function for Ork operators and fail for all others. The variable appears to be the operator, not the weapon system itself. Deeper. Think deeper, Genator Auxilium. What makes an Ork different?" I accessed my xenobiological data archives. Orks were a fungal-based hybrid species. Asexual spore reproduction, extreme resilience, rapid growth cycles, instinctive knowledge inheritance, and the Gestalt psychic field, I said. Correct. Vetik. 1-2's mechadendrites performed a complex gesture that I had learned indicated extreme emphasis. The greenskins generate a collective psychic effect. When sufficient Orks believe something functions, reality adjusts to accommodate that belief. Their weapons work because they believe the weapons work. The universe complies. This violated every principle of the Omnissiah's holy mechanical law. Physical reality operated through consistent, measurable principles. Cause produced effect. Materials possessed properties that could be quantified. Belief was irrelevant to function. "That cannot be correct," I said. "It is not correct. It is also not incorrect. It is outside the framework of correctness. The Orks have weaponized ignorance itself. They do not understand that their technology should not function. Therefore, it functions. Their stupidity is their strength." I processed this for 7.3 seconds. "Then the technology is not technology," I said. "It is psychic manifestation wearing the appearance of technology." Partially correct. The components are real. The assembly is real. But the function emerges from belief rather than mechanical principle. Remove the belief, remove the Ork operator, and you have non-functional scrap. Add the Ork, add the belief, and the scrap becomes functional weapon. The Ork does not cast a psychic power. The Ork simply expects the trigger to make the gun shoot. The gun complies. He dismissed me then, told me to continue documentation, to compile comparative data, to seek understanding through the blessing of the Omnissiah's holy analysis. I performed these duties for 9 more years aboard the Mordian's Reach. I examined 417 Ork weapon systems. Each confirmed the pattern. Impossible construction. Functional within their belief field, inert outside it. I began to develop a particular focus within this work, not the weapons themselves. Those were simply the most obvious manifestation of the phenomenon. I focused on the mechs. The Ork mechs were the builders, the artificers of greenskin society. They possessed instinctive knowledge of construction and repair that emerged from their genetic memory. They did not learn engineering. They simply knew it, the way baseline humans knew to breathe. Except they knew engineering that could not exist. In the 46th year of my service, the Mordian's Reach received authorization to capture a live Ork Mek for extended observation. The campaign took 11 months. 3 guard regiments committed, 14,000 casualties, all to secure one living specimen of a species that numbered in the countless billions across the galaxy. They brought him aboard in stasis. We maintained the stasis field during transport to the observation facility. I supervised the construction of the containment cell personally, reinforced void shield generators, 3 layers of ceramite plating, armed servitors at every access point. We were containing something that could build weapons from refuse. I took no chances. Magos Deltrian 4 joined me for the specimen's awakening. By this point, we had worked together for nearly a decade. I had learned to interpret the minute variations in his Vox synthesizer output that indicated emotional states his biological components still generated but could no longer express through organic means. The slight elevation in frequency that meant interest. The clipped syllables that indicated concern. "All systems prepared?" he asked. "Affirmative. Observation arrays active. Recording systems online. Containment verified. Let us observe what we have purchased with 14,000 lives." I deactivated the stasis field. The Ork Mek came to consciousness gradually. First movement, breathing depth increased. Second movement, eyelids opened. Third movement, full body tension as awareness returned and threat assessment began. He was smaller than the Ork warriors we had documented, perhaps 1.9 meters in height, where warriors averaged 2.3 meters. His musculature was less pronounced. His skin showed extensive scarring and burn marks consistent with repeated exposure to poorly contained explosive forces. He wore a crude vest of metal plates and leather straps, pockets bulging with components I could not immediately identify. He looked around the containment cell, assessed the void shields, the servitor guards, Deltrian 4 and myself behind the observation glass. Then he laughed. The sound emerged from his throat in ragged bursts. Not fear, not hysteria, genuine amusement. "You gits really think this'll hold a proper mech?" His low Gothic was heavily accented but comprehensible. Most orcs learned language through exposure to enemy communications intercepts, processed through their genetic memory. "Ain't got no locks worth a squig's fart." "You are contained, Deltrian 4 announced through the Vox system. "You will be provided materials. You will construct. We will observe. Compliance will result in continued function. Non-compliance will result in termination." The mech stood, stretched, examined his prison with what appeared to be professional interest rather than concern. "What kind of materials?" "Standard refuse, similar to materials observed in previous Ork construction sites." "Right. And what am I building?" "Whatever you choose. We wish to observe your construction methodology." The mech grinned. His teeth were flat and yellow, vegetable matter diet indicators, consistent with fungal biology. "You want to see how good stuff gets made, yeah? Right. I'll show you. But it won't do you no good. You ummies don't got the knack for it." We provided him with materials through the automated feeding system. 50 kilograms of assorted scrap, primarily Imperial origin, similar to components we had documented in previous Ork weapon construction. Ferrous metals, plastic composites, rubber fragments, wire, springs, fasteners. Nothing that could function as weapon without extensive assembly. The mech examined the pile with obvious disappointment. "This is rubbish," he announced. "Ain't even good rubbish. But I suppose I can make something." He sat down and began to work. I had observed human artificers before, master craftsmen of the Mechanicus performing holy construction. Their work followed pattern, analysis of components, planning of assembly sequence, careful measurement, precise joining of elements according to predetermined design. The mech's methodology bore no resemblance to this process. He grabbed pieces seemingly at random, held them up, looked at them from various angles. Sometimes he would bang 2 pieces together and listen to the sound they made. Sometimes he would sniff components, actually press his nose to the metal and inhale deeply, as though scent could convey structural integrity data. Then he would either add the piece to a growing pile beside him or throw it away with a grunt of dissatisfaction. "Dis bit's good. Dat bit's rubbish. Dis bit, yeah, dis'll do for the thing what makes the other thing go. No measurements, no planning, no reference to any design schematic. After approximately 40 minutes, he had sorted the entire pile into two categories, acceptable and unacceptable. The acceptable pile contained perhaps 30 kilograms of materials. He began assembly. His hands moved with disturbing speed. He bent metal with his bare hands, materials that should have required hydraulic presses. He welded components together by striking them repeatedly until friction heat bonded them. He created threads on smooth metal by simply scratching grooves with his fingernail. His fingernails were apparently harder than ferrous steel. Note the thermal generation, Deltrian, 4 said. He is creating weld-quality heat through kinetic friction alone. The force required should fracture the component materials. The materials are not fracturing, I observed. No, they are not. They should be. They are not. The Mek worked for 3 hours. He sang while he worked, guttural vocalizations that our linguistic cogitators could not fully translate. The words seemed to shift between Low Gothic, the Ork language, and something else. Something that made my auditory processing systems generate error messages. At the end of 3 hours, he stood and held up his creation. Dear, proper shooter, not the best I ever made, on account of da materials being rubbish and all, but it'll do da job. The weapon resembled nothing in any database I could access. The barrel was clearly a section of pipe. Interior diameter approximately 12 millimeters. The firing mechanism appeared to involve a spring, a lever, and what looked like a door hinge. The grip was formed from beaten metal plates. The ammunition feed was a simple box welded to the top, open to allow gravity feed. Request permission to test fire, I said to Deltrian. 4. Denied, we will not arm the specimen. The Mek overheard this through the Vox system. He laughed again. Don't need to give it to me, you get. Watch this. He had concealed something during construction. From his vest pocket, he produced a handful of metal fragments, simple scrap pieces, none larger than my thumb. He loaded them into the ammunition box. No propellant, I observed. No chemical accelerant. No energy source. The projectiles cannot achieve sufficient velocity without... The Mek pulled the trigger. The weapon fired, not exploded. Fired, a projectile struck the containment cell wall at velocity sufficient to crater the ceramite plating. The sound was wrong, too loud for the chamber size, resonating at frequencies that set my mechanical components vibrating sympathetically. He fired again and again. 6 shots total. Each projectile impacted with force consistent with standard autogun discharge. Each shot would have been lethal to unarmored human targets. The weapon showed no signs of malfunction or stress damage. Explained previously, Deltrian, 4 said. His Vox output had elevated half a frequency step. Interest. Intense interest. Within the Ork's belief field, the weapon functions. I need to examine it, I said. You will examine it. After we observe failure state, terminate the specimen. 4. His optical sensors were fixed on the Ork Mek, who was now examining his weapon with obvious satisfaction, completely unaware that we were discussing his termination. Archmagos Vetic. 1-2 authorized capture for extended observation, I said. This is day 1 of observation. Termination now seems premature. The data pattern is consistent with all previous observations. We gain nothing from extension. Terminate. The servitors raised their weapons. I could have countermanded the order. My authorization level was sufficient. I possessed the authority to preserve the specimen for continued study. I did not countermand. I told myself it was because Deltrian 4 was correct. The pattern was established. Further observation would yield redundant data. Termination was logical. I told myself this. The servitors fired. Multi-laser burst. The Ork Mek had time to look up, to see the beams converging on his position. His expression shifted from satisfaction to surprise. Not fear. just surprise that it was ending now. The beams struck. The mech's torso vaporized. Biological matter sprayed across the containment cell. The body collapsed. Vital signs flatlined across all monitoring systems. Specimen terminated, I reported. Retrieving weapon for analysis. The weapon lay where the mech had dropped it, still intact, still assembled. We extracted it through the automated retrieval system and transported it to my analysis chamber. I performed the same examination I had performed on the first Ork weapon 9 years earlier. Same protocols, same ritual precision, same measurements. The results were identical to every previous analysis. The weapon could not function. The barrel had no chamber pressure reinforcement. The firing mechanism had no power source. The projectiles had no propellant. Basic physics rendered operation impossible. I prepared for test firing. The servitor took position in the testing chamber, aimed at target, applied trigger pressure. The weapon exploded, the barrel ruptured, the firing mechanism sheared apart. The servitor sustained minor damage. The target dummy was unmarked. I logged the results, cross-referenced with previous observations, updated the database, performed all required documentation rituals. Then I returned to the containment cell where the mech's body was being processed for disposal. They had already removed most of the biological matter. Servitors worked with efficient precision, scraping flesh from the walls, collecting fragments for analysis. The mech's vest lay in a corner where someone had tossed it aside. I picked it up. The pockets were still full. I emptied them onto an examination tray. Metal fragments, wire, springs, pieces of things I could not identify, and a small gear. Not the gear from my memory, not the gear my mother had given me, just a gear, ferrous alloy, 6 teeth, diameter approximately 3 centimeters. I logged it as specimen personal effect. I archived it in storage container 447, Gamma. I performed the classification ritual, then I left the chamber and did not return. Deltrian 4 requested my presence. 4 days later, he had been reviewing the observation recordings. He wanted to discuss theoretical frameworks for understanding the Ork psychic field phenomenon. I attended the meeting. We discussed theories, we referenced previous research, we proposed additional observations. At no point did either of us mention that we had terminated a sentient being who had committed no hostile action, whose only crime was being what he was, a thing we wanted to study. A specimen. At no point did I mention that I had possessed the authority to preserve him, and had chosen not to exercise that authority. We could have kept him alive. We could have continued observation. We could have learned from prolonged exposure to his construction methodology. Instead, we had killed him to confirm what we already knew, that without orcs, Ork technology does not function. I had watched it happen. I had logged the data. I had continued. The Imperium requires this. Understanding requires sacrifice. Progress requires specimens. The Omnissiah's work requires materials. I told myself this. The memory of the mech's surprise, not fear, just surprise, remained in my archive. I could not delete it. I could not corrupt it. I could only carry it as background process, running constantly in peripheral awareness. Over the following years, we captured and terminated 9 more Ork mechs. Each time the pattern repeated. Construction from impossible materials, function through belief. Test fire failure when isolated from Ork operators. Termination. Subject 2 built a power generator from tin cans and wire. It produced electrical current for 17 hours before we terminated him. Post-mortem testing, the device generated no power whatsoever. Subject 3 built a cutting tool that could slice through ceramite plating. The blade was a piece of flattened scrap metal with no discernible edge geometry. After termination, the blade could not cut soft plastic. Subject 4 built a communication device that successfully transmitted signals across 3 light years to another Ork warband. The components included a food tray, 2 springs, and what appeared to be a piece of decorative jewelry. After termination, the device emitted no electromagnetic radiation on any measurable frequency. Each subject received numerical designation. Each subject built impossible technology. Each subject was terminated for data collection purposes. Each subject's death added to the database that confirmed what we had known since the first observation. Ork technology functions through collective psychic field reinforcement. Remove the Ork, remove the field, technology becomes scrap. I documented all of this. I performed my role within the Omnissiah's grand machine. I archived the data with appropriate ritual precision. Subject 8 was different. We captured him on Gazul, extracted from a warband that had been constructing some kind of orbital defense platform from asteroid debris and crashed Imperial vessels. The platform should have been structurally impossible. No internal support framework, no pressurization, no viable power distribution. It had been fully functional when intelligence first observed it. It remained functional during 3 weeks of preliminary orbital reconnaissance. When we destroyed the Ork garrison, the platform immediately began catastrophic structural failure. It broke apart within 40 minutes, exactly as engineering analysis said it should have from the moment of initial construction. Subject 8 was the mech who had built it. A platform the size of a small moon, constructed by one Ork over the course of 6 months. They brought him aboard in maximum security stasis. I supervised his containment personally. This specimen was different. This specimen had built something orders of magnitude more complex than any previous subject. When we woke him, his first words were not surprise or confusion. His first words were, "Where's me platform? Destroyed, Deltrian." 4 informed him through the Vox. Structural collapse following garrison elimination. The mech processed this information. His expression shifted through several states I had learned to recognize in Ork subjects. Confusion. Understanding. Something that might have been grief. "All date work," he said. 6 months building the best Zoggin platform in the whole sector. And you gits just blew it up. It collapsed, I said. I do not know why I felt compelled to correct this detail. We destroyed the garrison. The platform collapsed due to structural impossibility. Structural what? The design could not support itself. It required your psychic field presence to maintain functionality. The mech stared at me through the observation glass, his eyes, small and red within his broad green face, fixed on my optical sensors with uncomfortable directness. "You saying I built it wrong?" "No. I am saying you built it correctly according to Ork construction principles, which function through psychic reinforcement rather than structural engineering." "You saying I used the WH40K field?" This was the first time any subject had referenced the psychic field by name. Previous subjects had shown no awareness of the phenomenon. They built. Things worked. They did not question the mechanism. "Yes," I said. "You used the WH40K field. All Ork technology functions through this mechanism." The mech sat down heavily. His hands, massive things, more scar tissue than original skin, hung loose between his knees. "Nah," he said. "Nah, that ain't right. I build good. I know that principles. I know how load-bearing works. I know about stress points and reinforcement. I ain't using no psychic rubbish. I'm just building proper." This was fascinating. This subject possessed awareness of engineering principles, actual structural concepts. He believed he was following legitimate construction methodology. "Your platform had no internal support framework," I said. Mass distribution analysis indicated it should have collapsed under its own weight within hours of construction. I put in supports. Loads of them. Big metal beams all through the core structure. We recovered fragments. There were no support beams, only exterior plating held together by minimal welding and bolting. Deer was supports. I put 'em deer myself. 50-meter beams, reinforced with cross-bracing. I know me business. I pulled up the post-destruction analysis files, displayed them on the observation chamber screens so Subject 8 could see. hundreds of picked captures showing the platform fragments. Clear documentation of the construction. Exterior plating only. No interior framework. No support beams. Nothing but hollow space and external shell. The mech stared at the images. His expression cycled through confusion, denial, and something I had never observed in previous subjects. Doubt. But I remember putting in da beams. I remember welding them. I remember the whole thing taking shape, solid and proper. You remember construction, I said. But the construction you performed did not include the elements you remember. The psychic field created functional stability without requiring those elements. You believed you were building supports. The field made supports unnecessary. You performed abbreviated construction while experiencing memory of complete construction. That's, he stopped. Started again. That's not possible. I built it. I know I built it right. I cycled through more images, different construction sites, different Ork technology, each one showing the same pattern, minimal actual construction supporting impossible functionality. This is a weapon recovered from the KDOS-3 campaign. The Ork who built it believed it had a proper firing chamber. Post-mortem analysis, no firing chamber, just thin metal tube. This is a vehicle from the Gaz-Zul campaign. The builder believed it had a functional engine. Analysis. Engine block was empty except for 3 moving parts that connected to nothing. This is a communication array from the Valhon incursion. The builder believed it had proper wiring and signal processors. Analysis. Wiring connected to no power source and terminated in dead ends. I showed him 17 examples. Each one documented the same phenomenon. Subject 8 watched all of it. His expression flattened. The doubt solidified into something else. Something that looked disturbingly like the expression I had seen on human faces when fundamental beliefs shattered. So I'm not. He paused. I'm not actually building anything. I'm just thinking it works. You are building, I corrected. But your construction functions through psychic field reinforcement rather than structural engineering. You believe the components will work. The field makes them work. Your skill is real. Your knowledge is real. But the mechanism by which that knowledge produces functionality is not mechanical. It is psychic. He was silent for 143 seconds. I measured this interval precisely. During that time, his biometric readings showed elevated stress indicators. Respiration increased. Core temperature elevated by 1.3 degrees. Muscle tension throughout his frame. Show me, he finally said. Show me something I build not working. I'll build. Then you show me it don't work without me thinking at it. If you can prove that, then maybe you got a point. Deltrian. 4's Vox clicked in my auditory input. Private channel. This is unprecedented. Subject is demonstrating metacognitive awareness of the phenomenon. Recommend full documentation of experimental sequence. I acknowledged and opened the material feed. Subject 8 built a simple weapon, similar to previous examples. Projectile system, spring-based firing mechanism, gravity ammunition feed. He worked more slowly than previous subjects, stopping frequently to examine his work, to verify what he had done. When finished, he held it up. Reut des mi Shooter, built proper, every bit where it should be. Test it. I took the weapon through standard analysis, same results as always. Insufficient firing chamber reinforcement, no propellant system. Impossible function through conventional methodology. I prepared for test fire. Wait, Subject 8 said. Before you do that, let me fire it first, so's you can see it works. Deltrian, 4 accessed our private channel again. Do not allow the subject to fire the weapon. He has already demonstrated construction capability. Proceed to isolated testing. I looked at Subject 8 through the observation glass. He held the weapon ready, waiting for permission to demonstrate his work. Request denied, I told him. We will proceed to isolated testing. But you said, I said we would show you the weapon not functioning. We will do so, but we cannot allow you to fire it yourself. Security protocols. He lowered the weapon, set it down carefully on the containment cell floor. Yeah, right. Course not. I'm the prisoner. I don't get to prove nothing. We extracted the weapon, transported it to the testing chamber, prepared the servitor. Subject 8 watched through the observation glass as we positioned everything. His expression was carefully neutral. I had learned to read orc facial indicators over years of study. The neutrality was forced. Underneath it, hope that he was right, fear that we were right. The servitor aimed, applied trigger pressure. The weapon exploded. The barrel ruptured along 3 stress fracture lines. The firing mechanism shattered. The servitor sustained minor damage. The target dummy was unmarked. Subject 8 watched this. His hands, those massive scarred hands, gripped the edge of the observation slot. The metal bent under his fingers. "Do it again," he said. "Maybe our servitor did it wrong." The servitor performed identical motions to standard firing procedure. "Do it again." We prepared a second test. Subject 8 built another weapon. This time he worked even more slowly, checking every joint, every connection, every component placement. When finished, he examined the weapon for 7 minutes straight, turning it over, peering into mechanisms, running his fingers along weld seams. "This one's perfect," he said, "built exactly right. Every rule I know, every principle. It's proper." We extracted the weapon, prepared testing. The servitor aimed. Fired, the weapon exploded. Same failure pattern, same stress fractures, same result. Subject 8 made a sound. Not words, just sound. It came from deep in his chest, emerged as something between growl and moan. "One more," he said. "One more and I'll get it right. The results will not change," I told him. "One more," we allowed it. Subject 8 built a third weapon. He worked through the night. We maintained observation continuously. He built, examined, disassembled, rebuilt, examined again. At one point, he sat staring at partially assembled components for 43 minutes without moving. Finally, he stood, held up the weapon. "This is the best work I ever done," he said. His voice had flattened. The earlier energy was gone. "If this don't work, then nothing I ever built really worked. It was all just thinking." We extracted the weapon, prepared testing. Before we began, Subject 8 spoke again. "Can I ask you something?" Inquiry permitted. Deltrian. 4 responded. "All them things you showed me, all them orc builds what didn't work without the Warg field. They was all built by mechs, yeah?" "Correct. And all those mechs thought they was building proper? Thought they was doing real engineering? But available evidence suggests yes. They believed their construction methodology was legitimate. And you killed all of them, after they built stuff for you." I did not respond. Deltrian 4 did not respond. "Yeah," Subject 8 said. "Course you did. That's what you do. Kill us and study the bodies. Learn how we work so's you can kill us better." "We seek understanding," I said. I do not know why I said this. It was not required. The specimen did not need explanation. "You seek understanding," Subject 8 repeated. "And I sought to build things. Turns out, neither of us was doing what we thought we was doing. I was just thinking at scrap. And you ain't seeking understanding. You already understand. You just keep killing us to prove what you already know." The servitor fired the weapon. The weapon exploded. Subject 8 watched it happen. His expression did not change. The neutrality remained, no longer forced. Now it was simply empty. "Yeah," he said. "Right. There it is. Me whole life building things what never actually worked." "They functioned," I said. "They functioned perfectly within the appropriate conditions. Your skill is real. Your constructions were real. Only the mechanism was different from your understanding. If I think I'm building a support beam and da beam ain't really there, then I ain't really building. I'm just thinking about building while the WH field does the actual work. I'm just dead weight. Any git could do what I do if he's got enough boys around to make the field strong. That is not accurate, Deltrian, 4 said. Not all orcs can construct as mechs construct. The knowledge is genetic but specialized. Your role within orc society, me role is ta think real hard while scrap turns into guns. That's it. That's all I ever was. All any mech ever was. Can you show me something? He asked. Something you Umis built. Something that works without any psychic stuff. Just pure proper engineering. I considered this request. Looked at Deltrian. 4. His optical senses gave no indication of his preference. I retrieved a standard Mechanicus lasgun from the armory, brought it to the observation chamber, held it up so Subject 8 could see. This is a lasgun, standard Imperial Guard issue. It functions through photonic energy discharge powered by rechargeable power cells. The beam is generated through crystal focusing arrays aligned with precision to 0.003 mm tolerances. Every component is manufactured to exact specifications. There are no psychic components, pure engineering. I demonstrated field stripping, showed him each part, explained the function of each component, the crystal array, the power coupling, the beam focus mechanism. All of it working through measurable physical principles. Subject 8 watched, absorbed every detail. And that works the same every time? Every Umi can pick it up and fire it? Correct. This weapon functions identically regardless of operator. The machine serves its purpose through mechanical principle alone. Must be nice, he said. Knowing that when you build something, you actually built it. Knowing it's real. I placed the lasgun aside. Your constructions are real, I repeated. They kill efficiently. They function reliably. The fact that the mechanism differs from your understanding does not diminish their effectiveness. Yeah, it does. 'Cause now I know. Now I'll always know. Every time I build, I'll know it only works 'cause of things I can't control. Da WH field. Da Uver boys nearby. Take that away and I'm just stacking scrap in piles and pretending it's technology. He looked at me directly, those small red eyes finding my optical sensors. Is that why you kill us, after we build for you? 'Cause once we know that truth, we ain't useful no more? We terminate subjects to enable post-mortem analysis, I said. The data collection protocols require, yeah, right, da protocols. He leaned back against the containment cell wall. I got one more question. Inquiry permitted. When you kill me, and you are gonna kill me, I ain't stupid. Will you remember any of this? Will you remember that I was a person what could think and talk and ask questions? Or will I just be Subject 8 in your files? I did not answer immediately. I processed the question. Cross-referenced with previous subjects, accessed memory archives of 9 terminated Ork Meks. Subject 1 through Subject 7. I could not recall any individuating details, just data, construction patterns, test results, termination timestamps. Subject 8. I was having a conversation with him. He had a voice. He had demonstrated emotional response. He had experienced existential crisis when confronted with the truth of his own nature. I will remember, I said. You sure about that? I bet you said that same thing about the other mechs. Because they had not asked, because they had not known enough to ask. Termination is scheduled for 0400. Deltrian, 4 announced. 6 hours from now we have collected sufficient data. Subject 8 has provided unprecedented psychological insight into mech self-perception. Further observation provides diminishing returns. Subject 8 nodded. 6 hours. Right. That's long enough to build one more thing, yeah? What do you wish to build? I asked. Dunno. Something. just to see if I can still do it knowing what I know. Or maybe I'll just sit here. Might be I never build nothing again. What's the point? We provided materials, he did not touch them. He sat against the wall and stared at nothing. After 2 hours he spoke again. I had an apprentice once. Little runt named Grick. He was always asking questions. Why this work? Why that work? I'd tell him, you just gotta know the principles. Gotta feel when damn materials is right. Gotta trust your knowledge. He laughed, a bitter sound. I was teaching him lies. Everything I knew was lies. Your knowledge functions within your species' operational framework, I said. It is not lies. It is simply mechanism-specific. Any mech what learns the truth it is. He was silent for another hour. At 0300, 1 hour before scheduled termination, he finally moved. He picked up a piece of scrap metal, held it, turned it over in his hands. I'm gonna build one more shooter, he said. Not 'cause I think it'll really work. Not 'cause I think it matters. Just 'cause it's what I do. What I always did. Maybe that's enough. He built. His hands moved with the same speed as before, the same confidence. But something was different. He worked mechanically now. No singing, no satisfaction, just process. Components assembled. Joints formed, structure emerged. When finished, he held up the weapon. Dare. One more shooter what only works 'cause I'm thinking at it. One more piece of junk what pretends to be technology. He set it down. You can ave it. Study it. Learn whatever you need to learn. Then kill me and move on to next poor git. At 0400, the servitors entered the containment cell. Subject 8 stood calmly, made no attempt to resist. He looked at me through the observation glass one final time. I hope you actually remember this, he said. Somebody should remember that I was more than just Subject 8. The servitors fired. Multi-laser burst. Subject 8's torso vaporized. The body collapsed. Vital signs flatlined. I logged the termination timestamp. I archived the observation recordings. I retrieved the final weapon for analysis. It tested identically to all previous examples. Impossible construction. Catastrophic failure under isolated test conditions. I filed the reports. I updated the database. I performed all required documentation protocols. I did not retrieve Subject 8's personal effects. I did not examine what he had been carrying. I simply marked his remains for disposal and moved to the next assignment. Deltrian. 4 requested a summary meeting. We reviewed the data collected from Subject 8. The psychological observations were unprecedented. First recorded instance of Ork Mek developing metacognitive awareness of psychic field dependency. The data would be valuable for intelligence operations. Understanding Ork's self-perception could provide tactical advantages. Excellent work, Genator Auxilium, Deltrian, 4 said. This specimen provided optimal data return on resource investment. Affirmative, I said. We have authorization to acquire 3 more make specimens from the Gaz-Zul front. Standard protocol. Construction observation followed by termination and analysis. Understood. I will prepare the containment facilities. I prepared everything for the next subjects. I readied the observation equipment. I verified the servitor weapons systems. Subjects 9, 10, and 11 arrived over the following month. Each was contained, observed, documented, and terminated according to protocol. Each built impossible technology. Each technology failed under isolated testing. Each result confirmed established patterns. I do not recall specific details about subjects 9, 10, or 11. They blur together in my archive. Hands building, voices speaking, bodies terminating. Data accumulating. After Subject 11, I requested reassignment. Archmagos Vetic, 1-2, reviewed my request. Asked why I wished to leave Xenos technology analysis after 48 years of service. I explained that I had compiled sufficient data on Ork construction methodologies. Further observation would provide diminishing returns. My skills could be better utilized elsewhere. He approved the transfer, assigned me to standard Imperial technology archival, cataloging last gun variants, documenting ammunition specifications, verifying manufacturing tolerances. Mechanical work requiring no interaction with living subjects. I performed this role for 11 years. The work was routine, comfortable, no specimens, no observation chambers, no terminations. Just pure data processing. The Omnissiahs work without the complications of consciousness. During this period, I attempted to corrupt the memory files of Subject 8. Standard archival maintenance provided opportunity. I could have introduced data errors, degraded the recordings, deleted sections, made him truly forgettable, truly just a number in the database. I found I could not execute the deletion commands. The memory remained, intact, uncorrupted, running as background process. I hope you actually remembered this. Somebody should remember that I was more than just Subject 8. In the 59th year of my service, the Mordian's Reach engaged an Ork fleet at the Gazul system perimeter. The battle lasted 18 hours. We lost. The ship sustained critical damage. Evacuation was ordered for all essential personnel. I was designated essential. They loaded me onto an evacuation transport along with other senior tech priests and critical data archives. The Orks boarded the Mordian's Reach 40 minutes after we departed. Intelligence reported they stripped the ship for scrap. Every system, every component, every piece of Imperial technology that could be pried loose and repurposed. I imagined Ork Meks moving through the ship I had served on for 48 years. Examining our weapons, our systems, our carefully engineered technology built on consistent mechanical principles. I imagined them tearing it all apart and rebuilding it into impossible constructions that functioned through belief rather than physics. I imagined one of them finding the analysis chambers, the containment cells, the testing facilities, perhaps finding records of subjects 1 through 11, perhaps understanding what we had done there. Perhaps building something in response. Some weapon of revenge, some impossible device powered by rage in the Warg field, and the memory of 11 mechs who had been terminated for data collection purposes. I imagined that weapon functioning perfectly, killing efficiently, serving its purpose. I hoped it did. The evacuation transport delivered me to Mars. I was reassigned to the Basilicon Astra, cataloging stellar cartography data. Pure numbers, pure abstraction, no physical specimens, no living subjects, just coordinates and calculations. I served there for 33 years. During this period, occasional reports reached Mars about Ork technology developments, new weapon classifications, new vehicle variants, new construction techniques observed and documented. Each report included the same notation. Technology functions through psychic field reinforcement. Cannot be replicated by non-Ork operators. Recommend destruction of captured specimens to prevent contamination of Imperial engineering principles. We understood the mechanism. We had known it for centuries. We continued to capture mechs, continued to observe, continued to confirm what we already knew. The data accumulated, the pattern repeated, the machine continued. I exist now in the 92nd year of my service to the Omnissiah. My biological components have been reduced to 37% of original mass. My consciousness persists across multiple processing substrates, distributed between organic neural tissue and mechanical cogitator systems. I catalog stellar data. I process coordinates. I verify calculations. This is my function. I no longer work with xenos technology. I no longer observe living subjects. I no longer participate in termination protocols. I perform my designated role within the Mechanicus. I serve the Omnissiah's grand design. I am blessed to have transcended the weakness of flesh doubt and flesh regret. They tell us this is blessing. I log it as necessary survival protocol within an institution that processes sentient beings as experimental materials. The memory of Subject 8 persists in my archive, uncorrupted, running as background process. His voice, his questions, his existential crisis when confronted with the truth of his own nature, his request that someone remember he was more than a number. I remember. I remember all 11 subjects now, though I cannot recall details about most of them. Subject 8 made me look backward, made me search the archives for the others. I found their termination timestamps, their data profiles, the weapons they built, the ways they died. I remember that they were sentient beings who believed they understood their own skills. I remember that we killed them to prove what we already knew. I remember that I possessed authority to preserve them and chose not to exercise that authority. I remember that I am complicit. The Imperium requires this. Understanding requires sacrifice. Progress requires specimens. The Omnissiah's work requires materials. I tell myself this. The Orks continue to build impossible technology. They do not understand why we find it so complicated. To them, construction is simple. You gather materials, you assemble components, you expect it to work. It works. What could be simpler? Their ignorance is their strength. They do not know enough to doubt. They do not question the mechanism. They simply build and fight and build again. We understand the mechanism. We have dissected it, analyzed it, documented it across centuries of observation. We know exactly how Ork technology functions. We cannot replicate it. We cannot use it. We can only study it and destroy it and study the next example. Perhaps that is our limitation. We know too much. We understand too thoroughly. We have analyzed ourselves into paralysis, spending centuries confirming what we learned in the first observation. The Orks build weapons from trash and conquer worlds. We build perfect weapons from perfect materials following perfect principles and fight desperately to hold what we have. Sometimes I consider which approach is actually superior. Then I suppress the consideration. Such thoughts serve no function. They generate no useful data. They merely exist as background noise in consciousness that has persisted too long and remembers too much. I process stellar coordinates. I verify calculations. I serve my function within the Omnissiah's grand machine. Somewhere in the galaxy, an Ork Mek is building impossible technology from garbage. He believes it will work. It will work. He will never know why. He will never experience the existential horror of understanding that his skill is not truly his, that his knowledge functions through mechanisms he cannot control. He will build and fight and eventually die, never doubting his own competence. I envy him. I cannot envy him. Envy is inefficient emotional processing. I observe that his ignorance provides psychological advantages unavailable to beings cursed with understanding. This is objective analysis, not emotional response. I tell myself this. The memory of Subject 8 persists, uncorrupted, running as background process. His final words, I hope you actually remember this. Somebody should remember that I was more than just Subject 8. I remember. I do not know why this matters. He is terminated. His data is archived. His weapons were destroyed. He contributed to accumulated knowledge about Ork psychic field mechanics. His purpose within the machine was served. Yet I remember him as individual consciousness rather than data point. I remember his voice, his doubt, his decision to build one final weapon knowing it was pointless. Perhaps this is my limitation. Perhaps this is why I requested reassignment from xenos analysis. I had not sufficiently purged the weakness of recognizing test subjects as beings rather than specimens. The Omnissiah's servants should not suffer such limitations. We are blessed to transcend such weakness. They tell us this is blessing. I log it as the cost of serving an institution that claims to seek understanding while repeatedly confirming what it already knows. An institution that values dead data over living subjects. An institution that terminates consciousness to prove points already proven. An institution that I serve willingly, complicitly, continuously. I process stellar coordinates. I verify calculations. I exist as distributed consciousness across multiple substrates. I remember 11 Ork Meks who built impossible technology and died to confirm established patterns. I remember Subject 8 asking if I would remember. I remember. This is all that remains.